Hello, thank you for joining us on another episode of Japan by River Cruise. I am one of your hosts, Bobby Judo. I'm joining you from Fukuoka.
Hello, I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joining you from Malaysia.
We are the only two hosts. So we've got another great episode. I don't know, I felt like maybe somebody else was going to jump in with another one there, but we are your two hosts. We are your co-hosts, and we've got another great episode today. We're going to be talking about the latest in a series of Japanese missteps involving Naomi Osaka. And as always, we've got your weekly River Cruise recommendation. Ollie?
Yes, this week is a sponsored recommendation, sponsored by Disneyland Tokyo. We'll be recommending the It's a Small World River Cruise, asking the key question, if it's such a small world, how come every time I've ever been on that ride, I've never bumped into any of my friends?
Good point. Also, we'll tell you about the Japanese man who started commuting to work entirely by river cruise, and we'll tell you how long it took before he got fired for absenteeism. But first, soap talk.
Bobby, how's your week been?
My week has been great. It's better because I don't feel like I have to explain the soap talk thing. I started feeling kind of like a dick.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, for those that don't understand, small talk in Japanese is sekken banashi.
Yep. What? I thought for a second you said it, and I just got mixed up in my own head. This is how we've been doing it. We've been doing it too much. Anyway, yeah. So I've had a frustrating week, which is maybe why I'm feeling the sekken banashi stress a little bit more than I usually am. But I don't know. I think in my years in Japan, I've gotten used to the ways that foreigners get treated and kind of tend to let them roll off my back. And I did let them roll off my back this week as well. But it was just one of those. It's just incident after incident after incident of getting like this super foreigner treatment from Japanese people in Japan. The funniest one was I went to do a job at a Michi no Eki the other day, which is like one of these little roadside. It's not a service plaza. It's like a farmer's market and food stall and bathroom, and it's like a more down to home, locally sourced.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're talking local.
Yeah. And so we were filming a Koukai Nama Shuroku. So basically a live TV show. A TV show taped in front of a live, not studio audience, but an audience that kind of gathers at this little Michi no Eki. And they do it like an event.
A load of nosy Parkers.
Yeah. Well, they set up a little stage and they have everybody come out, and then they film it and they broadcast it on a TV station or something later. And we pulled up in a taxi, and I get out of the taxi, and as soon as I get out, there's another car in the parking lot that an old man and an old woman are getting out of. And the old woman sees me, and she makes direct eye contact, and she goes, and her eyes light up, and she puts her hands out like she's coming over to shake my hand, and she comes over and grabs my hand, and as she's shaking my hand, she goes, ueki no sensei desu ne. Which means, you're that potted plant teacher, right? which, first off, I am not. Second off,
not yet, you're not.
I think she's talking about this. I think he's like a bonsai artist and like a Japanese gardening student who became a master. White guy, yeah. He's a Scandinavian, I think. I'm not really familiar with him, but there's this super Scandinavian looking, like blonde, very attractive, very built white guy out there who he was a disciple of some Japanese master, and now he is a gardening and bonsai expert. I think I might not have that right.
Found a gap in the media market,
which is exactly what Japan wants from their foreigners, right? They want somebody to like come over and perfect a Japanese art and do it better than the Japanese themselves do. But she assumed that I was that guy. And she's shaking my hand and she says this, and I just kind of like laughed, and I was like, yeah, zenzen chigaimasu. And which is like, no, I'm totally a different dude. Me. And she was like, demo, yoku nite rasharu ne, which is like, oh, you look like him? And I was like, yeah, no, still zenzen chigaimasu. And like laughing. And at this point, her husband catches up, and he's like, oh, who is this? And she turns to him and she goes, oh, it's just some English teacher. And she turns around and walks away. Like in her mind,
those are the two options.
The two options, yeah, for being a foreigner in Japan is Ueki no sensei or just some English teacher.
Well, how could you have handled that any differently? I guess you could have gone, yeah, it's yoku waretemasu. Yeah, I get this a lot.
Well, I
right?
actually, it's funnier when like people come up to me and think that I'm someone who looks like me. Like I've had people in the subway be like, "Has anyone ever told you that you look like the guy on local TV?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, well, you look a lot like him." And I'm like, "No, I don't." Technically, I do not look like that guy.
That reminds me of the Jimmy Carr joke, which is, are you Jimmy Carr or do you just look like Jimmy Carr? Both. You know what you should have done? You should have gone, she should have gone, are you the bonsai teacher? And then you should have just flipped and gone, do not talk to me about fucking plants. Just all I ever get is plants. You like my plant show, do you? Well, fuck off.
just made her think that
trampling
he was this
on
horrible guy.
Yeah. Oh, you like plants, do you? Go F yourself. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess this happens a lot, but I guess it's particularly acute because you were half expecting her to be a fan.
Oh yeah, of course. That always like makes it sting a little bit more. But then like the very next day I got another one, which I know you've had this all the time. You know, where you're out with a Japanese person and you meet somebody or you go into a restaurant or something and they just totally ignore you and start talking to the Japanese person?
Man, I've had this even when my job was to interview that person. They would talk to the producer instead.
Okay, so I was there because I was booked for a job. They hired me to do the vision narration for the local baseball team. So like they have that big screen in the dome, and anytime they hit a home run or like have a chance to like make a double play or whatever, anytime they have some cheer that they want everyone to do, they've got my voice up on the vision dome going, "Let's go!"
Just going to pause you there, Bobby. Doesn't Piano Man Daryl listen to this podcast, and isn't this his job?
Oh, so first there was a dude named Max who was actually in the dome, like he was in the stadium, like as a hype man. And then when they switched over to a Japanese guy, I think they started using just the foreign voices for their videos. And Piano Man Daryl does some of it still. Like originally it was all his voice, and then they started using my voice for some of it, and now they're slowly replacing the leftover ones that were his voice with my voice.
Sorry, this is the way you found out, Daryl.
So sorry, Daryl. Daryl actually told me not to talk too much about the industry on this podcast. So again, sorry, Daryl. But no, it's not because they don't like his voice or anything. I guess it's because they said the ones that we did this time, they'd recorded them on one track with the music, and the music is out of date now. And so they're updating the music, but they can't do it without replacing the voice as well.
Oh, okay, right. It's a good job, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. But I show up to do it with an attendee, a woman who works in the agency that referred the job to me. Not technically my manager, but on location as a manager. And
they just turn up, don't they?
Yeah. And so we're waiting for somebody to come out and meet us and bring us into the recording studio. And a younger assistant director comes out. And as soon as he opens the door and starts walking toward us, in my best Japanese aisatsu professional voice, I go, "Ohayou gozaimasu, yoroshiku onegai shimasu." And he walks straight past me, doesn't even look at me, and like goes up directly facing her at a very close distance. So he's like blocking me out totally, and just starts talking to her. And I'm just kind of standing there and waiting. And like if this had happened like 5 or 6 years ago, like it happened regularly 5 or 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. But now like I've got like a pretty large presence in Fukuoka. This is the third time I've done this job. And like, they've hired me and I'm there to do it, and he doesn't even involve me in the conversation. Gives her his business card, finishes the entire thing, and goes, "All right, this way." Again, like walks between us with his back to me, opens a door and starts to like guide her in. And I just stand there, and I kind of like, I'm laughing about it, but I just stand there and I turn around and I go, yeah, sumimasen, ichiyo boku mo imasu yo," which is a very un-Japanese thing to do. Like the Japanese thing
hey guys,
to do,
I'm here too.
Yeah. The Japanese thing to do would have just to kind of like hung my head and followed along and you know, screamed "Let's go Hawks" and shut up about it. But like, this is so blatant, I gotta say something. And so he kind of turns around and he gets all flustered. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. And he runs back over with his business card. And I was actually like, "Yeah, 名刺は大丈夫なんだけど、せめて目線も合わせていただけたら." Which is like,
wow.
I didn't asking for your business card, but it'd be cool if you could like at least look at me, dude. And I said it all laughing, and he kind of like was apologetic, and it didn't like ruin the day, but I'm sure that he felt like attacked by it.
Yeah, but like, I wonder what he thought he was. I mean, on the one hand, he might have been nervous, right? Like often when like in this job, in this world, the first time they work with a foreigner is nerve-wracking. So it might have been that, and like having a Japanese person that he can do all of his, like standard form business with, Meishi Kokan, makes sense. But also, like, it's a risk to respond to that kind of thing sarcastically, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I think actually the responsibility should have been with the person from the agency, right? Like she should know better as to find ways to subtly involve you in the conversation.
Yeah, I think she should have like made an effort to introduce me or something like that. But at the same time, I mean, from her point of view, they're the client, and number one, you don't want to do anything to offend the client. But number two, he's also kind of like small enough down on the rung of authority as, a representative of the client that she probably was like, he's being rude, but it doesn't really matter. He's not anybody important.
Do you reckon she did know he was being rude? You don't reckon she was blind to it?
Oh no, because she's pretty up on it. I'm lucky enough that like most of the people that I work with, I've worked with either long enough or they are internationally minded. I think she speaks English.
Yeah, you've taught her.
No. I haven't worked with her that long, and I only say I think she speaks English because we speak 100% Japanese. But I saw another person I know where they were like mailing back and forth with her in English. But
okay.
I think it really is. Like they say, it's on men when you hear a sexist joke or like guys making inappropriate locker humor to step up and say like that's not cool. I don't think that's funny. In the same way, I very much feel like it's on Japanese people to be like, hey, there's a foreign person here. Let's involve them as well. Preferably without being like, hey, look at the foreign person here.
Yeah, I mean, and just like in like a majority white environment, I was speaking to my black friend who I was at university with. And
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Ring the bell. There were times where she said it, but for, particularly like at one point she had to deal with the police because she didn't have a bike light.
Yeah.
And she said like without one of my white friends like turning up and speaking to the police like kind of on my behalf, like things would have gone differently.
Yeah. This is like, I think even the Ken Tanaka video is about that. Like you go to a restaurant and like you're speaking Japanese, but they try to interact with the Asian person. You're the Asian looking person. And I think like...
I was just about to say this. Like, I think that, when I think about my ex, right, we would go to who my ex was Japanese. I presume she still is.
By the way, congratulations.
Oh, thanks, man. Ding, ding. I can do nothing wrong. I'm so cultured.
You're so diverse.
I can say nothing wrong. Everything I say has to come from an absolutely tip-top, perfect, morally sound perspective.
Well, I honestly feel that this is the most culturally sensitive, diverse podcast run by two white guys in the history of podcasts.
Thank you. But she would need to, like, I kind of had to point it out to her before she noticed. And the moment I pointed it out to her, because she hadn't really travelled very much, right? She wasn't aware of how this can happen. She was like, God, yeah, this is awful. Like, even something like I'd order a coffee, then they would ask... So I'd order a coffee in Japanese, which I was shit hot at. And then the waiter or waitress would ask her, does he want sugar in it? Right? Even though I just ordered in Japanese. And then she would go, yeah, no, he doesn't need sugar. Look at him. But I would, occasionally I'd chip in and say something sarcastic like, honnin ni hite mitara, which just didn't ever work, right?
Let's put a little note in this word honnin, gohonnin, or honnin, which means the person in question, the person him or herself, because I think this is going to tie into our news later on. But yeah, they just wouldn't. Would they get the sarcasm when you would do that?
No, of course, because also it's weird to say honnin about yourself.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So I can think of one other occasion as well, right? I was attending a graduation party for the international law course at university. This was a few years after I'd left the course, but I was nevertheless invited to the party because I was a bit of an it man. And this restaurant was completely overrun, right? There were far too many people
right.
In it. And like they'd hired out the whole restaurant. They did like a buffet style. And they got completely ripped off, right? They were, charging something like 6,000 yen for rubbish finger food. And anyway, one of these Japanese waiters just like properly pushes past me, like legit uses force just to get me out the way. Doesn't bother to say sumimasen, doesn't like do the little, as Zenja would call it, the little pigeon nod, right? To nod his way through. And I said to him, did you just push me? And he was a waiter. I didn't even realize he was a waiter. But I said it in Japanese because I saw he was Japanese. I said, did you just push me? He said, and like he really felt caught out by it. I said, unless I understand differently, I think you just pushed me out the way without saying anything, right?
Yeah.
And he went, I said, that's not cool, man. And then like his manager could see that there was like some kind of something going on.
There was a foreigner causing a problem.
Yeah, well, exactly. No, but clearly. But I said directly to his manager, I said, is it usual for your waiter to get from one end of the restaurant to the other by pushing their way through using their hands? And the first thing the waiter said to the manager was, I didn't realize this guy spoke Japanese.
Like that made it okay. Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just...
technically that counts as body language. All right, Ollie, we've got an unprecedented event here on the show we're going to have to deal with. We have 2 messages.
But do we even have time for 2 messages?
Let's just do them real quick, because one is from somebody calling themselves the original Brian in Fukuoka, and it says, I'm pretty peeved. Sad. I don't know where you got this imposter trying to pass himself off as Brian in Fukuoka, meaning our guest from the last episode. But while he may be a Brian in Fukuoka, he's obviously not the Brian in Fukuoka, because that's me.
I like the idea that there isn't actually one Brian in Fukuoka, but there's one platonic ideal of a Brian in Fukuoka, representing all gaijins in Japan. Maybe there isn't actually an actual Brian in Fukuoka. Maybe Brian in Fukuoka is all of us.
Maybe so, but I like the idea that he's continuing to be the stereotypical foreigner in Japan, in that he's upset that another foreigner in Japan got a little bit of the spotlight. And he wrote more, but let's not read it because we got another email.
Right.
This one's from Jackie, and it says, this Brian is called Jackie, and she says, it doesn't say where she's from, but it says, good afternoon. We're planning a wedding anniversary vacation to Japan Easter 2020 and would like information regarding cruises to Korea from Japan. Kind regards, Jackie. Jackie, Jesus Christ. Okay, so I feel like she
Did we legit get this email?
Oh, yeah. This is a legit email. And I just want to say, in case she's listening, that I'm going to try to be nice to you. I think you could probably tell by the name Japan by River Cruise that we're not normally that well versed in Korea. But because we really appreciate this mail, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and research this, and I will get back to you as soon as I find out what rivers run from Korea to Japan. But now it's time for the news.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in the news this week, but we're going to focus specifically on Naomi Osaka. Naomi Osaka, who I only just realised is 21 years old. Did you know that?
She's super young.
I kind of feel like Principal Skinner. Like, is it me that's out of touch, or is it the children that are out of touch? Nah, it must be the children. She is also embroiled in another scandal. For listeners that aren't aware, Naomi Osaka is a half Haitian, half Japanese mixed race tennis player.
For people who know how to pronounce words correctly, that's half Haitian, half Japanese.
Really?
Yeah, Haitian. It's
I think I've said Haitian in my life.
It's Haitian.
Okay, well, so she's mixed race, Haitian and Japanese. And she is more famous for her skin color than she is her tennis, it seems, these days in Japan. She's been in the news a lot, but specifically the story is there's a comedy duo called Amaso, which the news article which I'm reading has a little small dig by going, the relatively unknown female comedy pairing Amaso, which is fair enough because there are very, very few female comics that are big names in Japan, because there's also a sexism problem in their industry too. They made a joke which was that she needed bleach.
I think it was like a back and forth banter. It was like, what does Osaka Naomi need? Bleach. Ha ha.
Yes, and then the punchline was because she was too sunburned.
Yeah.
Which I think we can both agree isn't a good joke anyway.
It's not a joke. It's just something racist to say.
Right, but Osaka responded on Twitter by going, too sunburnt, lol, that's wired. I never get sunburnt by using a sunscreen, naming a local brand of sunscreen.
Yeah.
Which I know that she's smart enough that she's probably getting paid for that.
Yeah, no, that's one of her sponsors.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But no, I like she replied in a very kind of like lighthearted, brushing it off way, which I think like this is the most minor of any of the scandals surrounding her. Because there are people on the internet which goes, yeah, whenever I watch Naomi represent Japan in tennis, I always feel like there's a part of my patriotism that is difficult to muster. Like, there's proper people. I've heard people say this, and not on TV, but like while watching the clips on TV in the studio, a dude sitting next to me will say something like watching Cambridge Senchu, who's another mixed race, dark skinned, half Japanese. Runner. He's a relay runner, like a track and field athlete. And what did they say? They said, いや、なんか見た目的には日本人としてもどうしても見た目的には日本人としてどうしても応援しづらい. Which is like, because of the way he looks, like as a Japanese person, I just find it hard to root for him as a Japanese person. Which, like, it's horrible, because like this guy considers himself Japanese. Naomi Osaka, I think, doesn't want to be branded in terms of her identity. I don't think she wants to be American or Haitian or Japanese. I think she wants people to see her as herself.
And often she turns down opportunities in interviews to speak Japanese. Like they're always desperate, aren't they, for her to say a couple of words in Japanese?
Well, that's because her Japanese isn't fluent. Like she's not. She wasn't raised here, and I think like she is shrewd enough that she knows that if she says stuff and she's not perfect, then that gives them that in to go. The critics to go, well, she's not Japanese. She's not Japanese.
There's a really good book called The Good Immigrant, which is written in the context of the UK, which basically makes the case that that there's a double standard expected of immigrants or people who look different to the norm in the UK.
Yeah.
That like they only make the news when they've done something exceptional and are celebrated. And politicians too like capitalizing on this idea that, hey, look, we have like these Muslims representing us in the Olympics, or we have like this Sikh business leader, and it kind of sets unrealistic standards, right? And it kind of denies the Britishness of just people that are just getting by, right? That aren't doing anything exceptional, and that aren't contributing anything to the society in a way that is like reaches one of these benchmarks. And so like it's interesting to see that Japan hasn't even approached that phase yet, right? Like Japan is still like denying the Japaneseness of people that are,
Some of them are, and then some of them are super fast to be like that tennis victory, that's ours. Like we've got a fantastic tennis player. That's our Japanese person, and it's based on like those exceptional accomplishments. But I was just talking to somebody this morning about rugby, which we both are supremely passionate about.
Well, of course, you should be listening to our other podcast, Rugby. Oh, we love rugby.
And it's 3 A's. It's awe with 3 A's. So when you look for the website, make sure you have 3 A's in awe. But so the Japanese team is performing a lot better than expected this year. They had a big upset where they had a come from behind victory against Ireland. And when you look at the Japanese players, a lot of the commentary that I'm hearing from Japanese people that I know, and again in the industry. What's up, Daryl? Not that Daryl said it, just I'm talking about the industry again. The commentary is that there's so many foreign players. They're foreign people who have either married into Japanese nationality or lived here for long enough that They've come from other countries. They're these big, huge guys. And when you look at the Japanese team, it's no longer a bunch of Japanese faces. It's a very diverse group of guys. And so some people are like, well, how does that mean that we're rooting for a Japanese team if all of these players are not Japanese? And it's like, yeah, you know what? Other teams are made up of a whole bunch of diverse people from all over the world. Like all of them, like all of the other teams. And I understand that there's something like as a Japanese person or as an American, you want to look at what you see as somebody who's your country mate, and feel like you're rooting for your own country. But also, like, that's sports, man. That's sports. Like, the local baseball team is made up from people from all over the country and world who came there and put on the same shirt.
What I really like about people like this is sometimes they make the most progressive argument without even noticing it. They're like, oh, what? So it just doesn't matter which country you're from. You can just yes, that's the whole point. That's the point. It's almost like the very notion of statehood is antiquated and doesn't serve you as an individual. Yes, you've got it.
So what I like about this story this time with Naomi Osaka, not only is that, like, I feel like she's getting into her roll with it phase of responding to Japan, and being able to engage with it in kind of like a non-angry, kind of fun kind of way, while still pointing out that it's not cool, is that this time, and do you know the guy Bay McNeil?
The bonsai instructor.
Yes, the bonsai instructor. No, he's a columnist for the Japan Times. Yoko in Yokohama.
Oh, yeah, black dude.
Published a couple of books. I've met him a handful of times. He's a really cool guy. He was instrumental in getting, like,
well done, Bobby.
Japanese TV.
Would you say you're friends?
Are you going to congratulate me?
Yeah.
Not walking into that one. But he was instrumental in getting Japanese TV to stop doing blackface, which is a huge deal. I'm laughing because, like, they were still doing blackface. But so he wrote up, he's written a lot about Naomi Osaka, and he wrote up a response to this. And he said one of the things that he liked about it was that this time it was not foreigners pointing out that it was inappropriate. It was like there were Japanese people in the audience that, as it happened, were like, not cool, not cool. Which seems like isn't it? A huge level of progress.
Well, so this is what I was kind of thinking about. That firstly, the duo themselves do seem to have kind of walked into this in that, like, I don't think they necessarily knew how edgy they were being, right? And that's kind of clear from their apology too, that, like, it seems like this is like a big scandal that happened without them knowing that they were kind of, you know, towing the line between, you know, biting satire and inappropriate, right? Like, this wasn't like some transgressive comedians who try to be provocative and just slightly get it wrong. Like, these, they just wrote a lazy joke, barely even a joke, and it was their agency too, right? Which is one of the big agencies, one of the two big comedy agencies. Yeah, which kind of, you know, made the apology. But I wonder, right, whether there's also a small part of it which is they like, this is more acute because Osaka is a big celebrity, right?
Yeah.
And, like, you know, she's also quite loved.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why they kind of jumped on it so quickly. But
well, there's a couple things I want to say to that, if it's cool. One is that in terms of the apology, it does really seem like this kind of, like, required apology without any thought put into either why it was offensive or who it could have offended. And clearly, you used that word honnin earlier. Like, they never once use her name in the apology. They call her gohonnin. Which again, it's like, it doesn't seem sincere in addressing the hurt that was caused. And I think that's exactly like you said, it comes from a place of ignorance over why it was hurtful. And, like, they know now that blackface is wrong. Like, Yoshimoto got in trouble for an Eddie Murphy blackface. Rats and Stars and the TV network that was going to air their performance in blackface got in trouble. And so they know that blackface is not okay, but they didn't understand or make any effort to look into the reasons why it's not okay, which you should have been able to apply to the same concepts to racist jokes, right? And so it's ignorance, but also laziness and a lack of effort on their part to understand why this hurt.
Yeah, and something else which I think is relevant is it's not like they have an audience which is goading them to do this kind of material, right? You know, like sometimes you watch some comedians. I'm not sure how true this is in. Well, I can think of a couple actually in Japan where you kind of know that their audience is goading them to do a certain kind of material or take a certain take, which might be, you know, by modern standards, slightly sexist or transgressive or whatever. It doesn't appear like they have an audience which is seeking this kind of material. Right?
I would say that they're not seeking it, but also that they're probably fine with it. It's like white comics in the States who do racist material but only perform for white crowds and then get surprised when their stuff gets picked up on a major network or something and suddenly they find out that not everybody likes their stuff. I'm sure that they've done this joke before and it was successful. At
sure.
That the average Japanese person would not think about this so deeply. And again, that's not coming from a place of racism. It's coming from a place of, in Japan, it's okay to stereotype because they feel comfortable being stereotyped. All Japanese are, they share this identity that it's not.
I think that is a good point actually. That whereas an American person might see it as a front that you say, oh, you're like all other American people. I think in Japan, I think it's almost seen as a badge of identity that we're all the same because that's what they try to do. And that was they take pride in.
And that was Bay's other really good point in this response that he wrote on the Japan Times, which was that, you know, they wrote this joke that was pinpoint aimed at Naomi Osaka, and when they fired, it was more like scattershot that hit her. It hit anybody who looks like her, anybody in Japan who has skin similar to her. That now people who heard that joke, you know, if it was televised, if this and that, if it became popularized, that like. You might have somebody who looks similar to Naomi Osaka in your school that you could run around going, you need bleach for your skin, you need bleach for your skin. And
well, yeah, and what it does is it kind of reignites the debate that you don't have to look Japanese, in inverted commas, in order to be Japanese. It's like that tweet that was going around this week. The Pakistani guy who just said, I'm absolutely fed up with being asked for my residence card or my passport by the police.
Oh, the Pakistani Japanese guy.
Yeah, right. Like Pakistan ke Nihonjin, right? So ethnically Pakistani. If you looked at him, you're like, yeah, fair enough, Pakistani, but Japanese. And like his point is, he keeps having to say to the police, stop saying you're going to arrest me if I don't give my residence card or passport, neither of which I'm obliged to give you as a Japanese person. But the Japanese law is like, if you're foreign and you get stopped by the police, you have to show one of these two documents. Like that law can only be like you have to just trust your judgment as a police officer that who you're dealing with is Japanese or not. And anyway, his tweet was like, "Hey, look, even with this face, I'm still Japanese," and it got loads of retweets, and everyone was like, "Yeah, fair enough."
Well, like my
with a lot of people going, "Nah."
Yeah, my most viewed YouTube video is about the idea of like not assuming that people are Japanese or not Japanese based on their outer appearance. And I really do think like the Pakistani ke Japanese guy's tweet, like people in the audience calling out this humor, especially with the internet and the way news spreads so quickly, every time something like this happens, some new Japanese person discovers that it's not okay. And I hope that it grows. I really do believe that like if you think something is not cool, if you think it's insensitive, especially if you really don't think it's funny, the best thing you can do is to reach out and speak up and say something. And totally unrelated, you can send us messages here on the podcast at our website at japanbyrivercruise.com or at our other website at rugby.com.
Yeah, and I do think sometimes you just need to make an effort to be progressive. Like it's taken me a while to finally acknowledge that Justin Trudeau might actually be Indian.